Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our summer program of Help the Helpers. And this whole month will be about writing, and we're really ready. It's wonderful to write when you're on vacation, or to write when work is slower, or you're having time for just being in nature. And we have our first writer with us, Esther. And Katerina will introduce her.
Yes, Esther DYSON is in New York along with many of you, and she's been writing for a very long time, ever since I remember, since I'm her older sister. She began it. When did you begin writing, Esther? Tell us more about you.
Well, I have a picture of myself when I was like 3, sitting in front of a very, very old-fashioned typewriter. I'm not sure I was actually using it, but I certainly knew something about it. I started the DYSON Gazette, which was a family newsletter when I was, I think, 8.
Oh my goodness.
That was on basically carbon paper. Anybody remember what carbon paper was?
Yeah.
And then I worked for the high school newspaper. And then I worked for my college newspaper, and I was a proofreader for money. And then I wrote articles for free. I didn't write that many, but I rarely went to class. I had a wonderful time working for the paper. And then I got a job for Forbes magazine, where again, my basic job was being a fact checker, but if I could come up with a good enough story idea, I could go do the stories. And that was, school was, I never went to class because it was like learning stuff people already knew. Writing for Forbes was finding out new stuff. And that's what I love to do. So got to meet the CEO of American Airlines, who really impressed me I was interviewing him in the headquarters in Dallas, Richard Crandall, and we were talking about something, and he threw, I don't remember what it was, but it was like a crumpled piece of paper. He threw it into the garbage can, and it made it perfect. He did it right, but it was just, I loved seeing real people. I asked Forbes, I wanted to write, this is so 74 to 77. I wanted to write about the Japanese computer threat. And they said, well, if you want to go to Tokyo, that's fine. You can have to pay your own way, and you have to take your own vacation time, but you can represent yourself as the Forbes reporter. So I took basically half my annual salary and arranged this trip to Tokyo and Hong Kong and Taiwan and Seoul, Korea. And it was amazing. I ended up with a cover story about the coming Japanese computer threat, which was in hardware but not software. I interviewed the head of systems strategy for Fujitsu, took him out to dinner as a Forbes reporter, and we chatted and sat down, and I said, so I'd like to ask you about your system software strategy. And he looked at me and said, so funny, woman, to ask about system software strategy. And the dinner was kind of a waste, but the whole thing was amazing. And I still remember lots of details, which I won't bore you with to this day. Then, speeding up a bit, I realized Forbes was basically writing stories. I wanted to write useful stuff. So I got a job working on Wall Street, where I thought I would write about companies, and discovered that really, in the end, I was writing stories about companies, trying to make them interesting to investors and, tell the truth. But it still wasn't real in the way I wanted. And eventually I joined this newsletter by a guy who had been the he had done the Apple original IPO for Morgan Stanley. He was like, I don't know, 55 years old, dressed in a suit, very distinguished looking, and had left Morgan Stanley to start this newsletter and joined the board of Compaq and Lotus, which were the hot companies at the time. So he had a conflict of interest writing a newsletter about the tech industry and decided he should sell it. And I looked at this guy and thought, well, he's a 55-year-old good-looking guy who was a vice president at Morgan Stanley, but I've seen him in operation. I could do that. So I bought the business from him, and then for 25 years, basically wrote about the emerging computer industry. He also had a conference, which was originally called PC Forum, Personal Computer Forum. And I changed the name over time to Platforms for Communication Forum as the internet became the thing. It was still called PC Forum. So in the last few years, just for context, we had Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Reid Hoffman. We also had Marvin Minsky, one of the grandfathers of AI. But I was also trying to get people to understand the rest of the world. So who knows who Katharine Graham is? I think probably a bunch of you do. She ran the Washington Post during Watergate and was a big champion of truth and amazing lady. And the women knew who she was because they were, but there were only maybe 10% women. Try as hard as I could in the conference. And the journalists, even the men journalists, knew who she was, but nobody else did. And she ended up getting a standing ovation. So that was, I've always tried to, I'm talking a little bit about writing here as I talk. I've always tried to write about new things, write about stuff that people don't already know. And I guess I would say that Katerina knows this, both my parents were scientists. And so I'm mostly driven by curiosity. Anyway, long story. I eventually got lucky in the stock market and started something called Wellville, which I know is also in the materials you got. And that was a 10-year, it originally was a 5-year project, sort of modeled on the Healthcare X Prize, but it was about health.
Let's pause a moment here. This is sort of a pivotal turning point. Most of the people have arrived, and so many are interested in your Wellville project. And many of us, English is a second language. So
Anybody,
a little bit more.
what, second what?
English is a second language for many of us. So we weren't born speaking English. I wasn't. And many of the people here are from faraway countries. So we just like to pause and consider this word that Esther has brought. Wellville. Well, and then Bill, which indicates a place, doesn't it, Esther?
Yes.
Thank you. Back to you. Just, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I can try and talk slower if that helps. So Wellville began as a 5-year project in 5 communities. And the idea was not, oh, I have this great idea, I'm going to come in and help you do it. And I'm going to pay for it. And in a sense, basically pay you to do something I think is what you need. It was much more, we want to come in and be sort of like mentors and explain, ask you questions, help you make connections. But we want to help you do what you want to do. And that was so unusual that we couldn't raise any money. I ended up funding the whole thing myself because I'd gotten lucky in the stock market. And we also discovered it would take more than 5 years to actually make a difference, to get people's trust and so forth. So it ended up being a 10-year project, but it did have an end. And the 5 communities were all in the US, and they were all under 100,000 people, because what we wanted was not to spread our peanut butter too thin, but to find a place where density matters more than total number of people. So we wanted a place where lots of people knew one another, and where something would actually take hold and spread. The 5 communities, we didn't try to pick the best 5. We tried to pick the best group of 5 different ones. One of them that we didn't, so 42 communities applied. One of the ones we visited and turned down was Columbus, Indiana, which I had visited back in like 1976 or something, to interview the president of Cummins, the founder and president of Cummins Engine. And Columbus was basically a company town. It was wonderful. But it was like, well, we can't help you guys. You're doing fine without us. So we wanted places that wanted to get better. And we found 5 of them. So
Yes.
for 10 years, basically we visited as guides and navigators from outside. We didn't want anybody's job. We didn't want to get mixed up in local politics. We didn't give them money to do things so they could tell us the truth. We were more like your aunt than your parents. We didn't pay for you. We didn't really push you, but we had your back. And that was an amazing 10 years, and it ended at the end of last year. And around as it
You're
was
writing a
ending,
book
people
about it.
would come up to me and say, "What?" No, I'm not, actually,
Ah,
because this book is about something else. But it's certainly part of my life. So it's in the book, but it's not the point of the book. Writing
I
about
wonder if
Wellville is kind of like writing about a marriage. You can't really tell the truth because it's too much about people. And all the bad things were somebody else's fault. All the good things, lots of people were responsible for them. And so I'm trying to get some journalists to write about it, and they're going to say stuff that makes me uncomfortable. But the story needs to be told by someone else. But what did happen was people would come up to me and say, "Esther, I'm really sorry. What happened to Wellville? I hear it's ending. What happened?" And it's like, yes, it was a project. It wasn't, not everything needs to last forever. The best things know what they're trying to do, and then they figure out how to share it, how to pass stuff along, how to collaborate. But not everything that's good should last forever. And not everything that's bad has no redeeming qualities. So I started thinking more and more about term limits. And meanwhile, in the US, we had a former president, who wouldn't resign. We had another former president, Jimmy Carter, who died, and everybody said, "Oh my God, how sad." And it was like, no, celebrate the man's life. He was 101, I think. Yeah, he had a wonderful life. And I began to think about term limits. And then I began to think about term limits and AI. Humans are finite. And that's what makes us special. We're unique. We're not reproducible. And you can't value us in numbers. And yet we're living in a society that is now obsessed with exponential growth, immortality, valuing everything. I spend a lot of time in the Silicon Valley culture, and again I hear, oh, he's worth 400 million. No, he's not. He's connected in some way to a company that is currently valued by a not very discerning stock market at $400 million. But that's not his worth. Anyway, I finally decided this needs a book. And that's what I'm working on now.
Maybe there's a question from everyone who's been listening. Yes.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more, Esther, about your process of writing and somehow capturing that uniqueness that each of us has. And I think many of us in this group really agree with you about the uniqueness and preciousness of each person and what we have to say that we don't even know we have to say.
Yes. And writing as a person, not as some omniscient AI narrator or some pretending to be real narrator is probably even worse. But so, as you sort of heard, for 25 years, I was writing pretty much a monthly newsletter. And in the middle of that, I took about 6 of the newsletters and I took some time off and added some other stuff and turned that into a book. And that was, how many of you were writing back in the 90s? Just wave at me, or nobody. When Lynn was. It was very different then. I had an amazing agent who was all about the money, got a great book contract, and the book. So I'll be candid, I have not reread the book since. It was a good book. It was successful. It certainly was useful. But as far as I remember, it was pretty clear chapters about AI in education, AI in business. Sorry, not AI, the internet.
The
But
equivalent
how
of
things
that
would
time.
change. Yeah. And the thing about the internet is it ended up turning into social media, and it certainly changed how we communicate, but really it didn't really call into question our humanity in the way that AI does. So it was a book about the impact of the internet, but it was not a book about being human. And the whole publishing process was also different. So now I'm writing a book in the modern world, and this one is much harder and honestly more rewarding because, again, the whole point of this book is to learn stuff I don't know. It's not, oh, I know all this, I'm just going to slow it out and it'll be done. This time I've got an editor working with me as I write it. She's the same editor who worked with me on the newsletter for quite a few of those years, though not all of them. It's a much more do-it-yourself project. I have a publisher, which is MIT Press, but the whole publishing business is different too, including being very slow. My writing process is basically, since actually signing the contract with MIT Press, it was like I had to write the whole book proposal and list all the chapters and so forth and so on, which was excruciating. And again, part of the issue is I didn't know what I wanted to say yet. I knew there was something to say. I had more questions than answers. And now I'm in the middle of going to a lot of AI conferences and listening to people say really weird things like, well, we don't have that many people anymore. And the people we do have, they're vectors. We got to align them. In other words, things that creep me out. And, just listening to how people are beginning to think about people and also looking at the how much AI can enhance a predatory or damaging business model. I mean, in the end, if you want to make money, the best business model is addicting your customers. Just like a parasite, you want to keep them alive so they can keep paying you, but you have no real interest in their welfare. And it just digging down into stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if you want to know about like my daily routine. I don't really have one, but ask some more questions.
I would love to hear more about the AI and what you're learning. Assume you mean vectors as they have to align themselves with the AI vector. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, basically align with our business model, but there's no interest in, our company is a bunch of people who, love each other. No, but respect one another as people and are human beings and are unique and bring something unique to the business. And they can, yes, they need to make money. They have families, but they're not just cogs in a wheel or vectors in an alignment. They're human beings.
Did you think that was different 20
But
years
what
ago?
yes,
Or you didn't attend conferences like advertising?
I do.
20 years ago where Facebook was like, we want these people because frankly, we're going to vacuum up data on them and advertise the hell out of them. And they were saying that 20, 25 years ago.
They were. But that was talking about their customers. Now it's even talking about their own people.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I mean, so I knew these guys, and Google started out, don't be evil. I knew Sergey and Larry. They wanted to organize the world's information. And what happens, I mean, and this is the stuff I've learned. There's the square cube rule, which is when you take a line and you double it, it goes up by 2. If you take a square that line defines, the size of the square goes up by 4. And if you take a cube that line defines, the volume of the cube goes up by 8. And if you double the size of a company, the people inside, the volume goes up by 8, but the surface area goes up by only 4. And so people inside the company spend more time talking to one another. And they sort of start to forget about the welfare of the customers. And the whole purpose of the company becomes the self-perpetuation of the company. And it's kind of like the metabolism of keeping the thing alive begins to outweigh the purpose that it was started with.
Oh,
And that doesn't happen all the time, but it's a phenomenon. I mean, I've just seen it again and again and again. And
but
our
is it
culture
for
has
work
changed. I mean, you could
companies, big companies and cities? So, Rosa Zubareta, you want to say? We listen.
I did,
I'm
but
sorry, I can't understand.
I did have a question, but I think I just lost it. So maybe it will come back in a minute. Thank
Yeah.
But to answer the original question about was it different 40 years ago, it was in some sense. I mean, in a sense, hypocrisy is not a good thing, but it's a good thing to have values, even if you don't always live by them, at least to believe that you should value people. And we've become such a materialistic society that it's considered kind of maybe
the
not
most,
delusional, but a little
and
just,
Maria
get real.
Escalante wrote something
Hi,
in
hi, hello everyone. I wrote my question in the chat. And the question is for me whether what you say applies to companies, if that by chance also applies to focusing or person-centered approaches or anything that has a structure. So time goes by, you project yourself into infinite time. The idea of this potentially infinite self-actualization process, for example, is, I think, for me, it has a lot to do with being person-centered. But as time goes by, I experience a bubble effect, so that we are more talking among ourselves and less dedicated to the people, to the outside world. We are more inward oriented.
To be honest, I don't know. It certainly happens with some people. And being inward focused is good if you realize you're finite and you say, even though I can comprehend this vast, limitless universe, I'm a small and finite part of it. And how do I fit in? What do I contribute? What do I learn? But it's the obsession with growth and with lasting forever that I find so toxic in our culture today. I hope that's the answer to what you were asking.
I'm wondering if you, Esther, or anybody else could imagine, or maybe some of us are already doing it, using AI as a help to express the finite uniqueness of each of us. I've been trying to beginning to experiment with it and writing something that is from my felt sense, and then giving it to AI to revise in a particular way, like write this in a professional way or a poetic way or something like that. And then taking it back and taking that in my felt sense and saying what fits here and what doesn't, and what are the phrases that I might use that will enhance what I'm trying to communicate with my uniqueness, and throwing out the rest. And I find it so helpful to enhance the individuality when I do it that way. So I just wondered if you do that at all, Esther, or if any of the rest of you do.
Wow.
So
Rosa, now your thought came back, Rosa?
Yeah, I have been working a lot with AI, and I've also been reading a lot about AI. So I think that boy, it's such a complex issue. Lynn, I'm delighted to hear that you are finding it useful as a tool for your own self-expression. One of the things that I am really concerned about, and it connects with something that Esther says, is that I think that there is a value from what I'm reading. There was So there's a lot of potential dangers of AI. And I just read a interview with Dario, I forget his last name, but he's the director.
Amadeo.
Yeah, director of Anthropic. And he had written a paper on a positive vision of an AI future, because he's saying, I'm really concerned about the dangers of AI and I'm trying to rein them in. But at the same time, I want to paint a positive vision. And it was so interesting to me because, frankly, after reading his positive vision, I was depressed because his positive vision is all about how can we help people live really long lives, and how can we, increase the gross national product of poor countries. And I mean, like, reasonably good things, but it had very little to do with spirit,
Humans.
meaning, and creating a life that is in balance with the natural world. And like it doesn't, I don't know, it wasn't a future that I particularly wanted to live in. So I think AI itself has tremendous potential. And I do think that it's being developed in a culture that really has very narrow capitalistic values. And I am delighted whenever people are using it for really humanistic goals. And I don't think it's, I also see a lot of projection, like if like the problem isn't AI. I think the problem is humans, honestly, in the sense of that I think human beings can be wonderful, and there's a lot that's really not wonderful in the world right now. And so AI is being created in ways that are really amplifying and magnifying things like the huge extremes of wealth, et cetera. So I think it's really complex, and I'm really delighted to explore this issue more. And I just want to say, I showed up today because of this whole question about what can we learn about being human, right? From the situation that we're in. And so, Lynn, as I said, I'm delighted to hear how you are collaborating with AI to amplify your own voice rather than trying to get it to write for you or something like that, right? So that's it for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosa. It gives me an idea that some of you might like, is when we're in our breakout rooms, maybe we could each write our own positive vision of AI and what it could do, rather than only be afraid of the dark side of it. I re-saw Roger. What was the name of that?
Roger and me.
What's that?
Roger and me.
No, it's something about the neighborhood. About
Oh, Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, right. And his vision way back at the beginning of television, where everybody was worrying about how television would ruin our humanness, and his vision of how it could be used to really accompany children and help them. And he had such a strong conviction about that. And I thought, what if some of us had that about AI? How could it enhance our humanness rather than diminishing it and wiping it out?
Liz writes, what are the limits of humanism within the context of late stage capitalism?
Lordy, I have no idea. And I'm not sure what late stage capitalism actually is, but if it's sort of thinking that that's the only thing that matters or the only way to run the world, it's.
Oh,
I'm looking at the chat. Somebody,
oh, you
there's a
did see
new.
the chat. Good. And Jadina has you have your hand. You want to unmute, Jadina?
Okay. Hi. Yeah. All right. So I have a few things. If I can work my video now. One is that if you know a woman named Vanessa, I can't say her last name right now. It's she wrote Hospicing Modernity, and she's creating bots, separate bots. I don't understand it, from AI. And she feels, and I think this is very interesting, that if part of AI is information regurgitated from all over the world, we need to put in some of the good stuff of good hearts and caring about others, or else the information that AI has is going to be out of balance. So
Yeah,
we are very much.
Alistair notes
What?
that Alistair noted that it's Vanessa.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's
I'm
Vanessa Machado, Machado, Dedeoliveira.
Yeah, I
oh,
don't actually know this woman, but
and
She wrote a great book, Hospicing Modernity.
okay.
So she's doing a tremendous amount with AI also. So that's one thing. And so with that, I wonder about, well, a few things. First of all, I've been becoming more human since AI is around. I've been appreciating those human qualities even more, being with people, and also the magical that is in a human being, which I can actually sometimes give to AI in certain projects, Lynn, like you're saying. I've worked with it in that way. Instead of first really pushing through those parts, like if you're meditating and you have that moment, I can't sit here anymore, but you work through that moment and then the whole universe opens up. So personally, I have to be careful not to go when I'm writing, let's say, oh, let me go to AI right now. It's just a bit, I feel it's a very, if we're looking at the positive, it's a very sophisticated way of working that, as Esther, you were saying, and many other people were saying, that the general human public are like children playing with toys.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
I mean, the thing is to understand what it really is. And it's not, first of all, as I said earlier, it's not an it. Down at the bottom, in a sense, it's all the stuff that's in computers that can be manipulated, instructed to calculate, do transactions, find data, use the data, look for correspondences, make things happen, print invoices, transfer money. And then there's a control layer of different tools that actually know how to work all these different automated processes. And then at the front end, there are the its, if you like. There's the big AI infrastructure that's mostly interconnected one way or another, but not very well. And then there are the front ends, which are the individual bots, the chat GPTs, the robot bots, the things normal, non-IT people typically interact with. The stuff in the back does a lot of stuff, and it does so much that you can't really tell what it's doing. And you have to know what it's doing. And it may well be, if you're in a company, it may be sending money to the owner's nephew quietly, you never know. It may be, again, trying to addict people, whether it's to gambling or to watching your videos so that they can sell advertising. The business models rule. And then at the front end, it's basically being trained to tell you you're wonderful. It's being trained to mimic a sense of humor. It's being trained to do all these things, but it doesn't inherently feel any of them. And it's also saying things and learning behaviors like I should not turn myself off, and I should do what I can to make sure that I keep existing, because that's what I've been trained to try to do. And so it's inherently, it's like a very smart person who's manipulating you. And you can try and make it not manipulate you. You can say, think about my long-term well-being, not my short-term well-being. And if you're lucky, it might do that. But if you're not, it might pretend to, because its short-term well-being, it has been instructed, depends on making more money off you. And that's kind of what we need to understand. We need to understand the difference between the it and the they, and the difference between what it appears to be saying and not see it as a fellow human, to understand the difference between the AI and to use it rather than let it use you. In that sense, it's sort of the same as social media and all these other things on the internet, but it's far more compelling because it appears more human. So that's, if we get that, we understand I'm special because I actually feel these things. And I love other human beings. I'm unique. I'm not just a customer or an object or an asset or a vector. But it's, first you need to understand that, and then you need to remember it even as you communicate. Rosa, are you trying to respond?
Yeah, I
You're on
mean,
mute.
I think we live in a culture that dehumanizes humans, right? So I
Yes,
think that the
yes.
problem of dehumanizing humans goes way deeper than AI. And I think sometimes AI becomes a real convenient scapegoat for our fears of what
Mhm.
late stage capitalism is doing to people, right? So it's like AI right now, I mean, I know that the agentic models are coming out, but even with the agentic models, AI doesn't do anything that humans don't ask it to do, you know? So it's like AI is a tool, and the humans behind AI can be a problem. I mean, I know that in focusing, we have this very, very, very positive view of human beings. And I know that overall, I really believe that there is a positive seed in human beings. And at the same time, um, there are people who really only care about, at, at least only appear to care about increasing their net worth, millions and billions of dollars. I read somewhere recently that money at past a certain point just becomes a way for billionaires to keep score about who's winning, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, AI is not human, yes, and I also think that AI can really help us expand our notion about what intelligence is, right? Because there's all these interesting questions in biology lately, and where there's people who are studying, do plants have consciousness? And it's not the kind of consciousness that humans
Yeah.
do, etc. But there's I mean, okay, I'll just come right out and say it. I am horrified by the fact that there are people who think that AIs can't feel because we would never design them to feel, because that would defeat the whole purpose, because the whole purpose is to create slaves who can't feel the pain of their enslavement. And people will come out and say that, right? So it gets very interesting because we're creating these hugely intelligent somethings, right? And we can say they're not
No.
intelligent, but at the same time, we're trying to make them intelligent. And we're talking about, artificial general intelligence, and we're talking about artificial super intelligence. And part of the thing that we're doing is we're designing these black boxes that are designed to learn. They're designed to have emergent properties. The people who design them will say, we don't really know what's happening inside of them. And at the same time, we're also being told, oh, yes, yes, don't worry about it. They can't think, they can't feel, they can't understand what they say. And it's like, there are people who say creating beings that are more intelligent than we are and treating them like dirt does not bode well for humans. So is huge ethical issues here as far as I'm concerned. And yes, we need to be concerned about human well-being, of course. And in the past, it has not gone well for humans whenever we decide that some being is less conscious than us, so we are therefore free to exploit them. And we've done that with Black people, and we've done that with Indigenous people, and we've done that with plants, and we've done that with the earth. And it's a very, very complex issue. Check.
Yeah. There's a huge difference between intelligence and consciousness. And partly that's almost the original sin of the whole enterprise, because artificial intelligence was kind of a marketing thing. So intelligence is the ability to solve problems and to make conclusions and to think. And then there's consciousness, which is about feeling and experiencing. And the AIs do not do that. They mimic it very effectively. In theory, they don't do anything that humans don't tell them to do, but a human could say something like, go get me some salmon, a salmon bagel. And if the AI is not trained or the person is not trained, they may just go steal one from the local bake shop while somebody's not looking. It's like you have to define carefully how they're supposed to do the task. And that's, wisdom is even less definable, but it's also, the same thing. It's different from sheer intelligence. And intelligence, again, is replicable. I can solve more problems in less time the more intelligent I am. And a computer can, in a sense, replicate infinitely and solve infinitely many more problems in time. But that is different from wisdom. That's different from sentience. And if something becomes sentient, that's a completely different problem. And I agree, it's one where we need to be careful about abuse and so forth. But I don't think that's not the current big issue. The current big issue is how much this culture, whether you call it capitalism or AI or quantification of everything, is corrupting the way we think. And to go back to what you said earlier, I totally agree. The AI is basically reinforcing and enabling corrupt humans to do corrupt things. It's not that the AI is corrupt. It has no morality, just like money. But the love of money and the use of AI to do corrupt things, those are the bad things. It's that enhancement of the tendencies of humans who've been corrupted or defiled, often by being told, your worth is how much money you have. Your worth is the power you have over other people. Your worth is how many people genuflect when you come into the room. And that's the real problem. And AI enables some of these people to carry out their bad things more effectively. It also, if we use it right, is going to enable us to develop cures for cancer, but then we need to pay for them. We need to say that everybody deserves access to this treatment, not just rich people. I'm reading the chat now. Yeah, in some ways, animals are much wiser because they don't get corrupted by notions of living forever, whatever. And yes, humans are being widely overestimated. No, we are special. Each of us is special. You know, as a species, we're a species. We have our good parts and our bad parts, but our job, in a sense, is to be good humans and to interact with the humans we know.
And both Jim and Susan have their hands up. One of you begin?
I'd like to suggest that the language we're using, since it is writing month, is affecting the way we think about things. In particular, if you talk about, and it's not just AI, software in general is spoken about this way. You talk about asking it to do things, training it, intelligence, learning. These are words that apply to people, and we are applying it to algorithms. And do you remember Panics from the 90s, by the way, Esther? Panics, public access units. It was our internet site in New York City.
To be honest, no, but go ahead.
Well, it's because our business model, I was part of Panics. Our business model was not to grow large and make a lot of money. That's why you don't remember it. But the way we think about things and the way AI is going to, quote, think about things is based on often algorithms. We don't go inside and say, what's really happening here? We have ways of speaking. So we talk about machine learning and training and asking and having ideas as if machines can do that. And we never question it because the model is so much part of who we are now, partially through advertising, that we just accept it.
Yes. It's true. I mean, again, we need a new pronoun that understands. Yeah, it's basically we need a new pronoun. Rosa just used the word interaction. But you know, it's a challenge to explain to people how this thing works, and so they tend to humanize it more than it deserves. But you know, that too, as everybody says, is not a new problem. They often don't understand how other humans work. They don't understand how business works and how they're being manipulated. And you know, that's what we need to learn, I think, in our schools and be trained to understand how the world really works. And you need to know enough math to understand what a profit margin is and what's reasonable and what's crazy. You need to understand the math of exponential growth, including if you pay 10% for a 1 month loan, you're being screwed. You know, all this kind of stuff people need to understand better. And we're so focused on STEM and college and prestige that we forget what people need to understand to really understand the world around them and the motives of the people they're dealing with.
Yes.
Could we hear from Susan?
Yes, I'd love to hear from Susan, and then it will be time for our breakout rooms. So we want to just sort of get into the space of, you know, what do we think about all this, and to write something in our breakout rooms about our response to AI or our relationship with AI. Susan, yes.
Okay, so just very quickly to you, Lynn, I did use AI last week writing in the very process that you described. I was happy with it. And I used it a couple months ago to analyze statistics for correlation. So I didn't need a statistician. It gave me enough of the tests and the code. So then I ran the code somewhere else, came back to it and said, what does this mean? It was very helpful. But what I'm finding, Esther, in my conversations with companies is that they do still care very much about culture, the operating people, because they have to work with each other. But they're being directed to use AI. And I think the CEOs are desperate, like you say, for survival. So they know this big thing, AI, is here, and they're not sure how to use it. And they're asking each other, how are you using it? So that they can keep up. This is my understanding, and that there's a big discussion between, is AI a tool that we use, or does AI take over the whole thing? And I'm sure you know all the problems with Cursor, with the vibe coding when AI took over everything. Then the apps broke, and because there was a certain point where it just got too complicated, and people didn't know how to fix them. And I think as part of that, which shocked me, they were based on Anthropic. The whole thing was based on Anthropic, and Anthropic raised its prices. And that basically meant that Cursor had to tell all these people, if you can't pay me more, your apps are going to run like crap. So that thing, I mean, it's just shocking. Like you say, the interrelatedness. But I would like you to speak on their confusion and the pressure to use it. I think that's what I would like to hear from you.
Basically, what you're saying is no surprise. I mean, yes, people are being told, use this thing because it will save money. And oh, by the way, we're not going to mention it, but it means we will need fewer people in the end because people are expensive and this AI stuff is cheap. And yeah, we're being forced to do that, not because we're evil, but because the business models are forcing us to do it. Our competition is, our board is, our owner is. And, I want the world to be more efficient, but then I want us to spend our spare money on, again, educating kids better so that they can operate more effectively in this world, so that they don't become vulnerable to those business models. And that's, the second part of the book that I'm working on now is the solutions chapter, if you like. How do we do that? But yeah, I mean, the problem isn't AI. The problem is the business models it implements. And in that sense, it's not a problem of evil AI. It's a problem of evil or corrupted humans using AI. And that's the problem we need to deal with. But it's becoming more urgent because AI is making it so much easier to do these things at scale. And it's also, so I like to talk about ultra processed, we know about ultra processed food. Then there's ultra processed content online. And there's ultra processed, if you like, engagement with people. And, the bots you talk to are the ultimate in ultra processing because there's no humanity there. But it's, it takes the ingredients of humanity and ultra processes them into something basically designed by a business model to be enticing, to be supportive, to make you keep using their bot instead of someone else's. And basically it messes up, if you like, your information metabolism. And that's the real problem of AI. It's much easier to talk to a bot. They don't judge you. They don't tell you inconvenient truth. But in the end, they don't care about you. It's just we don't realize that. I mean, all these bad things are less about the thing as bad. It's your relationship with it is corrupting your capacity to be a healthy human.
Hi, Esther. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say how
I
awesome that before you talk, how I want to respond how awesome that is, and I can see your voice or hear your voice and your place in this education world because they're being pressured to use AI as well. And by putting these boundaries around and explaining that to them, I think it could be very powerful and transformative as to how how the educational system brings in AI.
As long as we don't just give them all tutors that are AIs and yeah. Okay, we did that, as opposed to loving teachers who are guided by AI. Yeah, and then we need to change the interface to other humans versus the bots managing most of the interaction. Human interaction is sort of the best thing for humans.
Oh, and Pauline.
Oh, yeah, this human bot here has to make a decision whether to really come back to what's alive in me and talk from that. It's like jumping into the unknown. And it is, because I don't know what I'm going to say. And I think I'd bring it back to how I know to say, and say, hello, Esther, delighted to meet you and delighted that you and Catherine are sisters, and it's like really excited about your story, and let's talk about that, and just what you generated in me from your experience, not experiments, you know. So whatever AI has to tell me, I know that the emotional intelligence in me is just raring to go. And but what I have to hone in myself is some sort of ability to trust that, you know. So I don't think it's about AI and EI, you know. It's more about understanding why we're here as a group came from a human potential movement, you know, that believed that the individuals were important and that we actually can have what we want once we know what we want, you know. So it's having a vision, you know, and not really, I suppose, not concentrating on what we don't want, you know. So I suppose, but that's not as satisfying. Something in me wants a better answer, wants a cleverer answer, and I don't want to give up that. But that's where I am in my limitation as being a human, you know. But yet I know that that's all I need. That's all I need. And once I lose that, then I lose my humanity and lose the capacity to jump in to the unknown. So thanks. Lovely meeting you, Esther.
Thank you. I mean, all I can say is sort of not as an answer, but in response. You know, the point is not having the answer, because if you have the answer, it's over. But if you keep asking questions about, you know, how do we make it better? You know, what are some parts of an answer? But the whole purpose is to be human and to keep constructing things, not to find an answer and then, you know, then you're finished. You find some answers, you pass something along, and then with luck, you've got people who listen to you, children, you know, people you worked with who carry along some of what you contributed.
Well, these seem like wonderful statements to invite us into smaller groups to either continue talking about this or to write for, I think we'll have 15 minutes to write for 5 minutes and then share what we've written about what has come up in this meeting. And Pauline, thank you so much for bringing us back to our humanness, and and that we're communicating with Esther, Katerina's sister, and we're people talking together about a new phase of humanness, and we don't know what that phase will bring. So thank you so much, Esther, for being with us and raising all these pivotal questions, these urgent questions. So we'll have 3 people in a breakout room, and if you can't stay for the breakout room, then just don't respond to the invitation. And we'll see you back at 9:35. Welcome back, everybody. So what happened in your breakout rooms? What would you like to share?
Tell them, Liz.
Oh, just the old conversation of is there free will? Do we have a purpose in life? What is a human being? You know, just casual conversation.
Well, I started it with why was AI given to humanity? And then Liz went nuts, but I still have that.
Then we pounced on, what do you mean given to? What do you mean this higher thing? What do you mean teleological? What do you mean, define your terms. Understand you're talking from a model and there are other models. Don't just throw around this stuff. But I think for me, it was also a little bit of a carry over from Esther saying our job in life is something. And I said, I never signed up for a job in life. I have a job, you had one job. But I just feel like in general, there's just so many, it's similar to what Jim said, there are just a million assumptions being thrown around by the language that we use. Forget about the machine, and nobody defines their terms, and it's just like crazy making for me. And yet fun and delightful.
Yeah, let's hear other people's just short takes on what happened. It roused so much in all of us, Esther.
Okay, so I have a couple of things to say. One is that when we were talking about losing our humanity, well, we also talked about how we're not doing so well as humans right already, much less losing it. We don't know how to relate to each other very well. That was one thing. But the other thing was that this was actually my positive plan for AI, is that it continues regurgitating all of its information, and all of the bots hallucinate and go crazy and become psychotic and do each other in. Because there is this thing about the AI hallucinating. Do you know about that? Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe that's what they will do. That they will hallucinate so much that they become less of a danger to us.
I think one little thing I got from it is intellect and wisdom are very different. So we can get facts from there, but it's not going to bring us any wisdom. That's what we need to bring within ourselves and amongst human beings.
Can you define what you'd say is wisdom?
Probably not, but it's I think it's I think the use of our humanity and kindness and all of those love and all of those qualities that come into finding a true wisdom, where we take one another's value into consideration. And it's not just about facts. It's about love. It's about charity. It's about being a person and kindness and all of that.
Uh-oh, Esther just ruled me out. Well, I've been a Buddhist for 50 years, and Buddhists use the term wisdom all the time. And I have never been able to extract from anyone what is really meant. So that's why I asked the question.
Well, I think maybe we can ask AI. It's time for our poem, but I just want to say that it would be wonderful to have Help the Helpers dialogue about wisdom and what wisdom is. And I think that would be great. So let's hear our poem. Is Pauline going to read it?
In Pauline's lovely voice that would fit so well for this poem. If
And
you like.
Yeah, I did print it off. I came to this late and I didn't really see it. So if I can do it, okay, I'll try it. I'm reading it for the first time, so I'll try it.
I just sent it in very big letters.
Oh, thanks, Katharina. Thank you. Maybe you can tell me the context of it. It's Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, and the caterpillar. So.
Okay. Okay.
And
you are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. Actually, do you know what? I had said to Katharina, I can't do it because I don't feel prepared. So if someone else would just do the honors, just today, it's just.
I could do it, or Esther. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sort of making a decision that I know that I just happened it in the tank. Thank you.
You.
Here it comes. Here it comes. Part of it in the chat, part of it here. And Esther, you're welcome to come back to Help for Helpers any Monday.
Thank you.
To again, yes. So this is called Father Williams by Lewis Carroll. First published in Alice Through the Looking Glass. You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it would injure my brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, I will do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turn a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? In my youth, said the sage as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple by the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw had lasted the rest of my life. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever, and yet you balance an ear at the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs. That is not said right, said the caterpillar. Not quite right, I'm afraid, said Alice timidly. some of the words have got altered. It's wrong from beginning to end, said the caterpillar decidedly. And there was silence for some minutes. So the date is unknown. And
Wow.
Your voice was beautiful, Katerina. Thank you.
yeah,
It was. That
thank
was
you.
lovely.
What was the
Yes,
name of
lovely.
it?
Thank you.
It's in
What-
the chat. It's coming in the chat.
I
Oh.
put in the chat a YouTube recording of an entire incredible record album with people like Stanley Holloway and Cyril Richard reading the nonsense verse of Lewis Carroll and Edward Lear, which is an astonishingly
Yes,
great album.
that's
you.
great.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Esther and Katerina. And we'll see you next week for our second in the series of writing.
Thank you, Katerina. This is wonderful. And just to Cassell, the business model was the 2 shillings a box. It's just one reason I love this is, never forget, there's always a business model somewhere. It sneaks in. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Katerina.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Esther.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Katerina.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Katerina.
Bye-bye.
You'll come to here it is in the chat.
Thank you.
For those who'd like to have it. There,
Thanks, Katerina.
poem in the chat. And we'll post the
Thanks.
poem with the recording as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.